honestly, doing any kind of headline writing, it's a challenge. The the content that a brand or company or whoever wants you putting out, if you're on the branded content side, may not align at all with what your readers and your audience want, because it's like, hey, we just acquired X company, let's put out an article, a blog post, a release about it. And the headline could very easily just be business X acquires business Y. And it's like, all right, what is in that for me? Is like, why would I read that? That's the challenge for you as the headline writer. And sometimes it requires pushing back on some, preconceived notions of the people that you're working with. It's harder than it sounds, right? Like, it does require the willingness to really go back to the content creators or the higher ups and say, like, I don't know, because sometimes the easy thing is to say, I don't want to fight this fight. I'm just going to like put out the content that they've asked me to put out. And then the content does not perform. And two things happen. One, maybe you feel good about being right that the content didn't work, but more likely they're going to blame you because you were the one in charge of putting the content out. And they were like, obviously, the press release about the acquisition was perfect. So it must have been the way that you packaged it that is the reason only 7 people clicked on it and all 7 of them work here. No, like you've got to, for self-preservation alone, have those conversations. And if they fight you on it, they at least know which side you were on and that you pushed for something more compelling. But it's better to have fought that and lost it than to be blamed when super boring content does what super boring content always does, which is nothing. So a good headline will never make the reader say one of these 3 things: good for them, no shit, and so. And what I mean for that is good for them is just, again, business Y acquires business X. Good for them. Good for everyone who owns stock in those companies. Like, what does this mean? What is the value to anyone else reading this? If someone gets promoted and you want to write a blog post, you want to write an article, whatever, about this person being named EVP. Okay. Why does it matter to anyone except that person and their parents? You don't want the reader to just see the headline and say, good for them, and move on. They're not going to click it. There's absolutely no reason to click that article because everything's in the headline, unless you're, again, a shareholder or whatever, in which case you've probably already read all that. No shit. It's just the easiest thing to write. Very obvious headlines. It can be something like, you see these articles about Netflix or whatever and say like, well, people are moving away from Netflix, but you'd see these headlines for a long time. They're like, cord cutting is happening at record pace, at a record pace. And it's like, yeah, I mean, yeah, we all know that. I'm not going to read an article that says something that is so obvious to me. You have to find the thing in there that's going to make someone be like, oh, well, I'm aware of that situation. But it's like, I saw an article yesterday. I'm like literally staring out in my backyard. I got all these like pollinator gardens. Like, we're really into pollinator gardening and for, bees and butterflies and all this stuff. It's nerdy. We'll talk about it later if you want to. But I saw an article yesterday about like honeybees are not endangered. Here's why everyone thinks they are. And it was a fascinating read about the difference between native bee populations, which are endangered, the realities of the honeybee population. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is a topic where I'm like very into it, but did not know this level of detail. So if it had just said bees are struggling, I would have been like, yeah, no shit. We've been seeing that for years and years, and I'm trying to do something about it.